All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And here he is, Jacob Prash. How are you?
Blessings in Jesus, trusting the Lord and looking for his coming, especially in light of contemporary events in the Middle East transpiring as we speak.
Amen. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for being with us. And David Lister, you're on the other side of the world. How are you this morning?
I am great. It's and looking forward to this report. I'm excited about hearing everything because it does seem like Jesus is coming closer.
Yeah, Maranatha. Amen. Thanks, David, for being with us so early. Also early in the morning. Davey, how are you this morning? You're handling a lot of things, but just to say a quick hi.
Yep, doing good. Good to see you all again.
All right, blessings to you. Welcome back from your travels. So that was very good with the believers throughout Australia. Jay, you are not on this side of the enemy line. What's going on there? But you are freedom loving Texas. No
I
pun intended. How are you?
I am in a undisclosed location in Houston, staying with my sister. It's very nice. I brought beautiful, stormy, lightning and thunder weather with me, so this is a great vacation already.
Couldn't be
Thank
Texas
you,
without
Lord.
Couldn't be Texas without that. Praise the Lord. Just to want to welcome everyone who's watching us live and watching us later. We do have a special report from Israel right after this broadcast, so stay tuned for that with Moriel Israel, with Elon and Moriel Israel giving us update and some really heavy stuff going on in the Middle East, especially Israel. Tel Aviv was hit today, so we're going to get to that, all of that. We got lots of things to share. Hopefully, you have enough time. Do you guys have 5 hours today? Because there's probably enough time to do enough things to talk about 5 hours. So, but all kidding aside, we'll try to keep it as condensed as we can. We can watch us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Vimeo, on Twitter. I call it Twitter, X, Telegram, Moriel TV, morieltv.org, all kinds of different places, all kinds of different things. If you do want to ask questions to Jacob Prash, go on Rumble, type in your questions. We'll take it in. Jacob's got answers to life. Jay, real quick, the podcast and Moriel Chapel. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, obviously, if you are traveling like me, I downloaded a couple of the latest lessons, put it on my iPhone, and listened to it when I was en route. So if you want to do that, you can definitely go to anywhere that podcasts are. Apple, obviously, is a great one. Spotify, download and learn about things about the Bible. Also, if you have not already, please make sure you check out Moriel Chapel. That's where all the lessons are being put on YouTube. And please, if you haven't already, sign up for our Moriel TV on X, or formerly known as Twitter. It's growing and it's the best broadcast, commercial free. So you can watch
Yes.
without interruption.
Very nice. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Jacob Prash, where are you going to be this weekend? It's Father's Day.
It's Father's Day, and I'm going to be with Pastor Marco Quintana, the Christian Church in Devore, California, and we begin at 10 a.m. It'll also be a day that'll live in infamy because two of the most notorious, nefarious figures in contemporary history were born on that day. Marco Quintana and Jacob Prash both have their birthdays, los días de cumpleaños.
Feliz cumpleaños, Jacob.
15 and it'll also be Father's Day, so we shall be there.
That'll be a lot of fun.
Stay
I think
there.
we're going to get a big giant cake. I think they have a big giant cake
That's
ready
what
for
I
you.
need, right?
But I'm glad you're feeling well, Jacob, and you're going to be with us. So it'd be a lot of fun. Get to Devore on Father's Day. Take your dad, take your grandfather, take your uncle, take anybody you can. It's going to be a message. It's going to be a Bible teaching message, but we're going to really exhort and encourage men. So bring your husband, your father, your uncle, grandpa, son. It'll be great. Spend time with Jacob Prash on Father's Day and wish him happy birthday while he's at it. So praise the Lord for that. Amen. Without all, it's so much stuff right now. I think we just could get started. Jacob, let's catch up really quick because this week, there's so much stuff that we can probably talk about it for infinitum. Israel struck Iran yesterday, would have been late night here yesterday, 5, 6, 7 o'clock. We were getting reports into the evening. It was early Friday morning in Israel, about 3 in the morning, 3:30 in Iran. And boy, the facilities, the infrastructure, nuclear scientists, you name it, the Israelis hit something that was seemed to be imminent at the time, but it's been a long time coming. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, as well as Steve Witkoff, as well as the Israelis said, Iran has enough nuclear right now, enough nuclear material to make 9 to 10 bombs. So this needs to be done. Israel did it. Jacob, your initial thoughts on the strike on Iran, and then we'll get into some of the details that happened after.
First of all, strategically and tactically, it was incredibly well planned and pre-planned, much as like what happened in Lebanon, and much like what happened in the Ukraine with attacking Russia from within. There was obviously pre-positioning of ordnance and other things such as jamming systems, blocking uh, avionic control from inside Iran. This is the same tactics that were used in Lebanon, just a pre-positioning. So this has been planned a long time. Obviously, Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, Amman, they could not have done this without, first of all, obviously some degree of cooperation from the United States, particularly the NSA and DIA, as well as CIA, but particularly NSA and DIA. And secondly, they could not have done it without a lot of Iranian patriots who are against the regime, a lot of people in Iran who are against the mullahs, who have cooperated with the Mossad inside of Iran. This is very, very obvious. It's extremely well planned, extremely well carried out. The first 5 waves alone eliminated the 20 top senior military commanders of the Iranian military. It took out not only the headquarters of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, but its chief and some other officials. And it took out the chief of staff of the Iranian military, plus the senior nuclear scientist who's responsible for the uranium enrichment to get enough fissionable material to make these 9 bombs. Some estimates say it could be as many as 15, but
Yes.
it's 9 for sure. So it is actually incredible in its coordination and planning. And it's been ready for some time. The preparation for it was diplomatic. Mr. Trump postured. He went to the Iranians, tried to give them every reasonable inducement to negotiate. Of course, Khomeini refused, insulted the United States, threatened the United States. So that was the first barrier. You can't say that he didn't give peace a chance. Or in his efforts to even restrain the Israelis. Second thing that happened was the United Nations, or the United Nothing, which is no friend of Israel, and I would say no friend of America either. The United Nations nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, said that Iran is in contravention of UN agreements that are pertinent to weapons grade uranium. They're in violation. So the UN is saying that Iran was out of order. This legally opens the door to Israel to take action that is much more defensible and much more difficult for Israel's critics to condemn. Nonetheless, Putin, for political reasons, China for political reasons, and most hypocritically, the Saudi Arabians and Oman have condemned Israel. Now, despite Khomeini telling the Americans to get lost, there is still another meeting scheduled for next Sunday to take place, I think, at Muscat in Oman. So Mr. Trump has tried to use what has already happened already as an inducement, saying, look, we warned you what would happen, but what's happened is nothing like what's going to happen. The Israelis have advanced weapon systems from the United States, more advanced than what you've already seen. They're the best in the world, and what's going to happen is going to be worse than what's happened already. Negotiate. Come and make those concessions concerning the enrichment of uranium and so forth, and the centrifuges. Will Iran take the bait? Iran is in a hard between the proverbial rock and a hard place. One, they can't lose face because the regime is in a precarious situation. Many Iranians do not like that regime. Many, many, to the point that some of them are pro-Israel and many are pro-Western, pro-American. That's the first problem. So they have to show a strong hand and to the Iranian public, remembering that most of the uneducated Iranians or most of the supporters of the regime are the uneducated Iranians. The more educated ones tend to be less supportive of the regime. This is something that went back to the time of the Shah. Also, the Shah's son, Pahlavi, who lives in Connecticut, is calling for the overthrow of the regime. So
Yeah.
Israel is restraining itself and being restrained by the United States for the following reason. We don't want to kill innocent Iranians. Much the same as the situation in Gaza. They're holding Israeli hostages and they're using their own children as human shields. This has restricted the Israeli capacity to eliminate Gaza, Hamas completely. Well, the Iranians know that. They're playing the same kind of card. They know the Israelis don't want to kill Iranian civilians because many of them don't like the regime and want to make friends, want to reconcile with Israel, America, and the West. So that's the situation they're in. He's in a desperate situation. He's old, he's not thinking correctly, and some of his top advisors have been killed already by the Israelis. So this can go either way, it can go any way. But I'm sure it is related in part to Daniel chapter 10, as we've been saying consistently for a number of years. That is the situation as it presently stands. As you said, we've already spoke a short time ago to the Moriel branch in Israel, and we'll be able to hear, or viewers will be able to hear what Elon Murray has told us is going on
Yeah.
at the moment.
Very good. I'm going to go to David Lister. David Lister, Operations Rising Lion. This is about the strongest decisive move Israel has made in quite a long time, especially against Iran. Obviously, you remember Green Reaper with Hezbollah, with Hamas, but these were terrorist groups. This is now the head of the snake. This is now the head of the snake. The Rising Lion has now stood up. Nuclear programs, ballistic missiles, they were all struck by Israel. Your thoughts on the initial strike? This is 5 waves. So 1 wave, 2nd wave, 3rd wave. Now we're up to 5. And we'll get to what happened in Tel Aviv in a moment. But at least for that, what are your initial thoughts?
Iran is at its weakest point that it's been. It's in bad shape here. And because this is not the first time that Israel has gone in and destroyed their radar systems and various weapons and everything. So they're getting worse and worse. And like we saw on the television, they're refueling over so they can stay over target. And it's been devastating for them. And like you said, they've taken out some of the top advisors to Khomeini and scientists and everything. And so Israel is in a good position, but they've got hundreds of missiles being fired at them right now, and so pray for the peace of Israel. And let's pray that that Netanyahu can get us out of, can have a victory, or at least bring Iran back to the table, and maybe, God willing, a complete overthrow of the Khomeini regime and return this place back to Persia, and the Persians that are there. That are many pro-West.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit Persians. Obviously, there's other groups that came in, Arabs
Yeah,
and things like that. But in terms of the original Persians, yeah, I think they would probably want their land back from the
yeah.
invaders that have taken place. Jay, your thoughts on the initial strike? 5 of them, 5 waves, and we'll get to the one that happened in Tel Aviv in a moment. But at least for now, lion has risen. The lion has risen over Iran at the moment.
Well, 2 things. First, having been to Tel Aviv and seeing how clustered that city is and how kind of chaotically built it was, I would ask that we definitely pray for the civilians there. I could see a few hits would cause some significant damage. And then second, I pray, I hope God would use this to give some measure of freedom to the Christians that are in Iran. that maybe this removes the air of invincibility that the regime, the mullahs have, and maybe there might be, as there was during Obama's reign, an uprising against their leadership, and maybe this time it might be a different outcome with Trump.
Yeah, and we already seen some of the protest, and at least in a small scale in Iran, and some of the graffiti on the wall that usually tells you what people are thinking. You know, Israel help us. We're stand with Israel, and both in Farsi and in English as well. Jacob Prash, the
Hey,
Natanz.
Marco, Marco,
Yes,
one sentence.
I'll come
Jacob
back.
had a
Yeah,
better, Jacob
yeah.
had a better operation name instead of Rising Lion. Should have been Operation, should have been done long time ago.
Yeah.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, for sure. Jacob
Yeah,
Prash,
sorry.
the Natanz and Fordo nuclear facilities. It seems to be the Natanz one was pretty much wiped out, although there's no evidence of any kind of the damage is on the surface, they say. There's no evidence of any kind of radiation, but Fordo was hit pretty as well as Shubashi, which is a radar site where was very prevalent during the Iraqi and Iran war. Tabriz was hit hard. So some of these areas, do you think the strike is so overwhelming that these things
Okay,
are
this
done
becomes the
over the years?
problem, Marco. This
Yes.
becomes the problem. It is entrenched perhaps a quarter of a mile underground, much like you'd have a gold mine. It'd be a quarter of a mile underground and reinforced with steel reinforced concrete. Um, so it's not impregnable, but very difficult to hit. There's only two ways to take, or three ways to take a target like that out that I'm aware of. All, three non-nuclear ways. You could use nuclear weapons, obviously, but the three ways to take it out are with the American fuse bombs, the bunker busters.
Yeah.
Whether or not the Americans have given that kind of ordinance to the Israelis and whether they used it, I don't know. That has not been disclosed. We don't know. But it would take a bunker buster to do that. These are fuse bombs. The second, and technically you've got to hit one blows a hole open, and then another projectile goes into it. It's very complicated. Whether that kind of thing was used or not, I don't know. The second way is to destroy the access facilities. The in the cave entrances, in other words, with the roads that are usually protected by giant, humongous steel open and closed doors, kind of thing that was actually invented for, I think it was called Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado for the American Air Raid headquarters. Well, other countries have imitated that American technology, including the Iranians. You'd have to find a way to destroy the entranceways into the underground facility. And that would take some doing, but it could be done with conventional weapons. Um, Air ordnance. The third way is not practical. It would take commando raids, actually dropping commandos and going into it. That would be the third way, other than a nuclear way. But something else that could help is those things need air conditioning. They need certainly circulation, ventilation. They need plumbing, running water. There are other facilities outside of it that are needed for the internal operations of the underground facility for the people who work there. Circulation being vitally important. If you could pinpoint and attack the support facilities, um, the ventilation facilities, the water pumping facilities, if there was a way to target those things and cut off air circulation and water into the underground bunkers itself, that would be another way to do it. So there are ways to do this, but which ways the Israelis have used and how far it's gone, we don't know as yet.
Hmm. I'm going to go to David Lister. David Lister, the attack on the scientists, the top generals in the IRGC, was very impressive. I mean, they killed the chief, Hassan Salami. They killed our Armed Forces commander, Baghetti. They also killed the one of the most closest to Khomeini, the advisor, Shamkhani, Hussein, Rashid, Khani. Oh my goodness. They went after every single top general as well as the scientists. How could they have gone so far deep into that? I mean, it looks like they gathered them in a place and they just they went after their homes, they went after their offices. It was quite an impressive thing to go after these top generals.
Well, obviously, they are got the Mossad has agents that hate the Iranian leadership and have been reporting whereabouts and, of course, giving them great intel to help with this mission because of their hatred, of the oppression from the Khomeini regime. So that would be one way to that this information could be passed on to do such precise striking and everything. But also, I just thought they Israel has at least 100 of these 2,000 pound bunker bombs. That was reported back in December of last year near Christmas. So they gave 100 of the BLU 109 2,000 pound bunker busters. So they do have that many. There's others that are reported. The 1,000 pound bunker busters have been given to them also. So they might be able to get down there, but 100 is not that much if you're going that deep. So we'll see. But yeah, taking out the leadership, kill the head of the snake, it makes it ineffective for the younger leadership to wage war. So
Yeah, Jacob, the six Iranian nuclear scientists have been eliminated. Will that hamper? I mean, it has to hamper their nuclear proliferations and some of the things that they've been trying to do. I would imagine so, right?
Well, certainly it would, absolutely. But what it is it shows the cooperation between the Mossad and dissidents inside of Iran. They were able to pinpoint them, locate them,
yeah,
not only identify them, but pinpoint, locate them, and take them out. Again, this is a very well pre-planned operation. They would not have been able to get so many of them so quickly had it not been according to a plan that was already well formulated and to some degree well rehearsed. And it required the cooperation not only of American intelligence, but of cooperative partisans inside Iran, Iranians.
Yeah.
Iranian
Yeah,
yes.
no doubt. Also, the generals, the IRGC, that got hit pretty hard. I don't know who else is left, but I'm looking at a sort of a flow chart, and at
Yeah,
least the top
Khomeini
four are
claims they've been
gone.
replaced already, but they're
Yeah,
being replaced at generals who had a much lower rank.
right. Yeah,
I'm
so the
saying
top four
they're
are
taking out
gone.
their Joint Chiefs of Staff, the equivalent of their general staff.
Yeah.
This, their senior general staff has largely been taken out.
Yeah.
The-
So yeah, and Ismail Khani, Khani is he's eliminated, although they didn't know where he was the last few weeks. So that's interesting that he's now been eliminated. So it's a severe blow. Jacob,
Absolutely.
let's talk about the retaliation because we've heard this morning. Obviously, right before we got on, we were praying, and Tel Aviv was being hit. The barrage, 150 to 200 missiles coming in. It overwhelmed the Iron Dome, the Aero system. I know that Saudis were trying to take some of the drones out, as well as the Jordanians, as well as the Americans, but certainly Tel Aviv was hit today. Let's talk about that for a moment.
Okay, the first 100 were largely intercepted reportedly, as they were the last time when 300 were fired. We don't know now because even as we speak, the attacks are underway. But there have been reports within the last 20 minutes of civilian casualties in Tel Aviv. How many, we don't know. But when you fire that many all at once, and it's not about the Iron Dome is only to protect against Katyushas and short-term rockets. We're talking about the Arrow systems, 1 and 2, the David slings, and the American Patriot missile backups. That's what we're talking about. These systems are defensively well situated and effective, but they can be overwhelmed, overswarmed, which is
Yeah,
what the Iranian counteroffensive is doing.
yeah. We're getting reports now, Jacob, from believers in Israel that they're in the bomb shelters now.
Yes.
They are very concerned. Obviously, they're shaking. They got their kids in there. This is in central Tel Aviv, so they asked us to pray for them. So
Yeah.
pray for these believers. They're wonderful believers, and they're in the shelters now. So you could imagine the situation. It's pretty heartbreaking at the moment. I know some of the apartment buildings have been hit. Dave
Yes.
Lister, your thoughts on this? Some of the apartments have been hit. Defense Secretary says they went too far. They targeted civilians. So Khomeini, watch out. You're next.
Well, they've done cross the red line, as it were, to attack civilians in Tel Aviv. And Israel will not take this lying down. They're going to go heavier, and Netanyahu has promised more attacks. So is they could wipe out the whole leadership, God willing, to have a change over here. I know they were very effective with Hezbollah and with the uh, beepers and the radio attack. Let's hope that some of these explosions that we're hearing about their rockets blowing up on the pads is pre-planned Mossad operation, something like that. So I pray they take them all out.
Yeah, so I mean to get that close, yeah, Tel Aviv. I mean it's a highly populated area, and man, they went after civilians. This is the hard part. And so Iran cruise missiles launched toward Israel, and the plan is to continue to shoot at them. So Jacob, are we going to see another strike, wave six, wave seven from Israel pretty soon?
Undoubtedly, this is going to go on for at least several days,
Hmm.
unless Iran falls to its knees and throws up its hands, because
God willing.
the regime is afraid of falling. But there has to be a humiliation of the regime,
Hmm.
and you have to understand the Shia mentality of the fundamentalist Shias. It represents not a defeat for Iran, but a defeat for Islam. That is their mentality. It's a
You know,
jihad.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this, Jacob. The mullahs the last few weeks have been talking quite a lot about the Mahdi and in the 12 imams coming and the Mahdi's
Yes.
coming and
Yes.
some of these guys think that he's already somewhere in the world and they need to get him out of some well or I mean it was just bizarre stuff. But they have been talking about the Mahdi, so this suits them some kind of
Yeah.
apocalyptic catastrophe coming
Yes.
up.
Absolutely. Many Christians don't understand. We've said this before once or twice on Moriel TV and possibly in RTN. Um, Biblically, what the Quran and the Hadith say, and what the Judeo-Christian scriptures say, the Bible says, our Christ is their Antichrist.
Yes.
Their Antichrist is our Christ. The things that the Judeo-Christian script, the Old and New Testament say about Jesus, they attribute it to the Antichrist. They have this whole thing called Jibril. But what we know to be the Antichrist is their savior. It's their Christ. It's just the opposite. It's just Islam is always the opposite. Islam says that Judas died on the cross, not Jesus. Islam says the chosen son was Ishmael, not Isaac. It's always the opposite. And it's the same with Christ and Antichrist. So yeah, the same as we have Christians who are excited about Jesus coming again and prophecy being fulfilled and Jesus coming soon, you have the Islamic equivalent. Among Sunnis and Shias and Ibrahimis and others. And certainly Sufis even. So you have that. Only they view the Antichrist, as our Bible describes them, as their Mahdi.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big prominent figure in their eschatology. I guess we call it
Oh,
Muslim
yeah,
eschatology
absolutely.
with the black
Absolutely.
flag, and now they got the red flag for
That's why
vengeance.
you see exactly. That's why you see the black flags.
Yeah, Jacob. Now, what of Hezbollah and Hamas now? Now, Hezbollah said this morning that they're not going to fight, at least for now. They at least they admitted that they are not getting the funding with Iran being hit so hard, and Hamas. Who knows what they're going to do now? But if this hit was pretty good on Iran, will they go into the aspect of history now, or do you think they'll continue to fight? But I don't know how they're going to fund them.
Well, if the European Union has their way, and if Starmer has their way, and if Macron has their way, they'll live to fight another day.
Oh
Thank
man.
God that Biden is not in the White House, or Obama's people, Susan Rice and so forth, are not still in the White House. In that case, they would live to fight another day.
Mm,
Um, the issue now is the Houthis. That's their remaining surrogate. That's
yeah.
their remaining pawn, or the Houthis in Yemen. That's the situation. Again, we have to understand that in the Israeli way of thinking strategically, there was a fear not only of Iran getting these weapons, but putting some nuclear devices into the hands of their surrogates and letting Hamas do it, letting Hezbollah do it. Oh, we didn't do it, they did it because they're being occupied and oppressed and things like this, and claim no responsibility, even though they supplied the nuclear devices. So it was a response to October 7th, but it was also preempting any possibility of them getting weapons if Iran was able to develop them. So you've got to look at it comprehensively and overall. What's happened in Gaza and what's happened in Lebanon are part and parcel of stopping Iran's overall strategy for what they're doing through the use of surrogates. Absolutely. Now you do have a quasi-Christian government in Lebanon and control of the military at the moment, and Hezbollah has been decimated by the Israelis. They are not an effective fighting force. You only have pockets of terrorists. You
Yeah.
don't have the Israelis
Gutted them. Yeah.
completely demolished that great threat. I mean, if you go back 3 years, people were saying Iran has 250,000 rockets and they can hit Tel Aviv, they can hit, Jerusalem, they can hit anywhere in Israel. Well, that was true, but not anymore.
Yeah. No, you're
Again,
absolutely.
the effectiveness of the Israeli military, despite the failure to preempt what happened October 7th, despite that, they have had humongous successes. One of them being what they did to Hezbollah and Hamas.
Yeah.
Do you
David.
think that Israel can use this Iranian affair to go in and finish off Hamas in Gaza? Because they've
I
dropped out
think that
of
I
the
think that
headline.
I think that this Iranian affair provides a media smokescreen, so the Israelis can carry out aggressive actions against radicals in the West Bank, what remains in Gaza, and possibly somewhat in Lebanon. They can exploit this because the
Yes.
world's media attention is focused on Iran. They can go in and finish the job in Gaza. This is something like what happened during the Falklands War.
Yes.
The Israelis went into what they coordinated deposing Yasser Arafat from Lebanon, um, while the world was focused on the Falklands War between Argentina and Great Britain. But that's just the way. War is also fought in the media.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. David Lister, the other nations around them, the Saudis, are a bit friendly toward Israel. These cooperated in some degree. Qatar has vowed to help the U.S. bases. They're attacked. Saudis and Jordanians were helping shots drones. They are also very afraid of the Iranians, at least for now. Do you think the cooperation will continue? And is that the Abraham Accord being rolled over in the Middle East? Or what's the future of those nations with Israel in a debilitated Iran?
Well, of course, first off, I would say this war is good for Saudi Arabia. The price of oil is going up, other UAE, they'll all come out where, what's the old saying, war is good for business. So that part of it is good for them. But the Sunnis and the Shiites are mortal enemies, as you pointed out. And of course, they would love to see Iran deposed or at least made impotent so that they're no longer a threat. It would be good for Saudi Arabia. And of course, the Abrahamic Accords would prosper because Trump is trying to do a new world order based not on war and strength diplomacy, but on economic diplomacy, which is something new, which, hey, everybody gets rich, everybody gets prosperous, we can go and live peacefully. But we know from the Bible that's not going to happen. And so, whether this Antichrist, where he comes from and who he is, could be among us now, but it could set up a scene for him taking economic power and things like this too. You
Very
need
interesting.
money to run a war.
Yeah, Jacob, from a biblical lens, you obviously have spoken and taught a lot on the book of Daniel 10, the Prince of Persia. What about that now? And what about Jeremiah 49? Many biblical teachers are talking about that this is a fulfillment of the destruction of Elam, the judgment on Elam, the southern part of Iran. Should we look into a little bit deeper, or what do we expect from a biblical lens?
Okay, concerning Daniel 10, uh, there is no doubt that there's a demonic power that came over Iran, and it seemed to have gained momentum under Jimmy Carter in 1979. When Khomeini came back from France, when Carter did nothing about it, he didn't back Bounty Sadr and the people who could have kept him out. It was just a failure and the weakness of Jimmy Carter as a very weak president. That was what happened. And this power that you see over Iran is totally demonic and committed to Israel's destruction. Do I think that power is going to go away? I think the regime can be stopped, but I don't think you're going to stop the spiritual power over it. We're told there'll be a conflict with Greece, which represented Europe at that time. There'll
Right.
have to be a conflict between the West and Iran. That's the situation. Now, there's only one or two ways this is going to happen. One, this is it. This is the conflict between the West and the Principality over Iran, the Prince of Greece. This
Right.
is it. I don't think so, but I'm not saying 100% it isn't. Okay. Secondly, it is a hiatus, a hiatus. You have to remember there are two kinds of Iranians. There are the Persians who are educated, okay, and westernized, and the ones who aren't. And the ones who aren't are far more numerous than the ones who are. The other thing is you've got Azerbaijanis and other minorities in Iran. And you have people in Iran who are friendly to the Taliban and others who are not. So it's a very, very mixed situation. But it is a principality. And that principality will involve strong angelic confrontation. Now, I'd be very cautious about saying, this is it. This is it. Concerning Jeremiah 49, I think it is leading up to it. I think it is an indication of what's happening. But Jeremiah 49 leads up to 51. And chapter
Babylon.
51 has two meanings. The short-term meaning would have been the destruction of Babylon by the Persians, by Iran. It would have been the Iranians who destroyed Babylon. So that's the
Yes.
problem. The second is the ultimate fulfillment is in Revelation 17 and 18, Babylon the Great, one being the shadow of the other. So it's theologically more complicated than people would like to think.
Yeah. It's not just a forward chapter and verse, and that's it. There's a lot more to it in terms of fulfillment and the ultimate fulfillment. So, Jacob, what do you expect next? And what's the next shoe to drop in the Middle East? Aside from maybe the retaliation of Israel, we know that that's probably going to be the case, for sure the case. Whether Iran's regime changes or not, I don't know. But what do we expect next?
Anything can happen. You have the hypocrisy of the Saudi Arabian government, who are, secretly they're clapping. Okay. Publicly, they're saying you're attacking our Muslim brothers. See, you've got complete hypocrisy in among the oil states, who dominate OPEC, the Emirates, and particularly Saudi Arabia. So there's a great hypocrisy there. I think the world will scramble to get a stability in oil prices. Fortunately for the United States, Biden is out of power, and the United States is able to produce a lot of its own oil, um, and become energy independent. Will not affect America as much as it will affect other people. But if this goes on for any amount of time, it's going to have economic repercussions for the economy of China and for the economy of Europe, and on a wider scale for the global economy. Even though America will be less impacted, nowhere will be immune. Why? First of all, the embargoes are already hurting Russia. Russia is selling a lot less oil than it used to. It'll push China back into Putin's corner. China will have to make concessions to Putin to get oil if the Iranian oil is stopped. Um, it would be very easy for the American Navy to blockade the Straits of Hormuz. But again, the Israelis simply have to wipe out Karg Island. And they would not be able to meet the export demand of China by doing that.
Right.
So it will have repercussions globally because of oil prices. And that will affect things in the Far East with China, and China will become more beholden to Russia because it's getting oil from there.
Yes.
The beneficiaries, it might help Venezuela a little bit, except that their oil production infrastructure is so dilapidated, it won't help much.
Yeah.
Could potentially help Canada a bit.
Yeah.
United States, it could be helped in certain ways and hurt in other ways, but not as badly impacted as Europe. So the economic factor must always be weighed. It must
Yeah.
always be weighed. Wars can come just because of the economic factors. So that is another thing I would expect. What I'd also see is the Israelis will try to use this as a diversion in order to finish off Hamas without being as vulnerable to international criticism for doing it. Those are the things I would expect. I would also expect Donald Trump to do what Donald Trump does. He's going to play poker. He's going to be poker faced. And it don't watch what he does says, watch what he does. Same with Saudi Arabia. They may be saying this. Don't watch what they say, watch what they do. Well, we know what they've said. They're condemning Israel. What are they doing? Shooting down projectiles coming from Iran. What they say don't matter. They all lie.
That's
It's watch what they do.
That's right. David Lister Jacob brought up China, and obviously they're on the sideline condemning Israel at the moment. They are struggling economically, financially, but we also have a military deadline that they need to complete. So let's talk about the economic side, and then I'll jump over to Jacob on the military side.
Well, for China, they appear to be a giant superpower when it comes to things, but they're actually pretty brittle because they are something of a landlocked people surrounded on all sides by enemy. Plus, they're losing demographically. Their birth rate may end up down to 0.08%. And before 2100, you could be seeing that more people will be living in America than in China. And then you have counter plans of India to be replacing all of China's exports. I mean, they're trying to rapidly um, mobilize and everything their industry. So Modi is doing really good there, and Trump has been really good about isolating China. People think that this New Deal is good for China, but it's actually really good for America because it has now isolated. And I know you were talking about Z earlier. Z's plan is, was actually a total war, taking back Taiwan and making sure that the red families all give their assets to the central government. But he's had rebellion within. And so his plans are coming unraveled, and many people believe he's going to be pushed out before the 27 election. they're actually allowing things to happen to him that usually they run cover for. You're seeing things in public like he's not as strong as he was, he's weaker. His wife was holding him up, things like this, telling him to slow down when he walks. He's kind of doing like the Biden thing. So many people think he won't make it to 27. But then what happens is you get somebody stronger and twice the son of the devil. So I don't think China's going anywhere. There'll always be a confrontation. But also, Canada, if I would put it on Canada, Canada's got a Trans Mountain pipeline that they could pretty much get 1 million barrels a day going now to the West Coast. Alberta, Carney is trying to work with BC so that they can get this pipeline up, and it will bypass America. Instead of coming to America and facing a tariff, they want to run it to the West Coast, which people like China and other people would be interested in this oil. So, and it could come online pretty quick. And also is interesting is that they have a new chemical that they can put in these pipelines to make the oil run faster and everything. So that's proving interesting that you could move something where instead of moving just 750,000 a day, you can move 1 million a day, which will help with things. And then, so, but with our oil exploration in Alaska and opening up some liquid natural gas, it's really helping our economy. The tariffs are bringing in lots of money for us. And with China being now having to pay 50% and we're getting into their markets, they've been hurt by this. And so we're going to be making money on tariffs. We're making money on just the oil. Like, I don't know if anybody remembers Newt's plan on tariffs way back when he was running for president. He felt that we could balance our budgets just off of tariffs and just off of the increasing sales. Because what's going on with Trump's plan and why we're having so much of a fight is Friedman's plan was all focused on cutting. And with our budget that we've got, we are cutting the largest amount ever, $1.7 trillion, but nobody's focused really on that. And so Trump's plan is actually different from the old way of focusing on cuts by the Democrat-led budget office. And they're saying how bad this would be on our economy, creating all this spending. Well, yeah, it's a lot of spending, but the CBO has always been wrong. It's never been right my whole life. It wasn't right under Clinton. It wasn't right under Obama. It wasn't right under Trump. In fact, they blew Trump's spending by $2 trillion. They blew Obama's, they said 25 million Americans will get on Obamacare and only 12. So if you want to know what won't happen, listen to the Congressional Budget Office run by Democrats. And so what Trump is focused on is increasing revenue from increasing people being at work and creating a golden age where people are working, and then throw in the tax cuts. You're looking at some pretty good revenue that will be spending because our economy did great. It's on fire, and S&P did the best. I mean, I don't know if you looked at any of your ETFs or anything, if you own them. They did wonderful in May and did pretty good the 1st of June. So our economy is doing really well. Consumer confidence is up. Spending is up by Americans. So everything that you can see that they're measuring, inflation is down again. So Trump's policies are working. right now it's off the headlines list, but the economy is doing pretty good. The stock market's soared, and now with the price of oil going up, maybe it could have a small effect, but if this tax bill goes through, the average American family is going to have 15,000 more dollars in their pockets each year. So, and you're going to have tax credits going up, uh, no tax on tips. All this is going to be good. They probably in the Senate bill, they'll get to the Senate the Senate will add in no tax on Social Security, which is kind of stupid, and I hope they do get that. And Jacob, I'm sure, wants no tax on his Social Security too. Yeah. So I mean, when I look at the economy, the China has been isolated by Trump's thing. Instead of Xi's plan to isolate America and make us a regional power in the Atlantic, he's now become isolated because every nation around him wants to deal business. We had, with Trump, they're making deals. The good guys are getting good deals, and so
Thank you,
our
David.
economy's rolling.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Jacob real quick. Jacob, the back to China, the military deadlines that they have, 2027, 2035, 2049. They're strategically placed that way. For one reason is you have the anniversary of the PLA coming up, the People Liberation
Yes.
Army, and then you have Xi's reelection, his fourth term. Is that a reasonable target that you could see them doing something in Taiwan or in the South China Sea?
First of all, we have to understand that a lot of the buildup in China is done for two reasons. The military buildup. One is just dog wagging because the economy is in trouble. Um, we see that. That's if you don't know what dog wagging is, it means you try to unite a nationalist sentiment by beginning wars or military conflicts with India, with whoever, Taiwan, whatever. The second is a lot of their ordnance development, weapons systems development is cosmetic. It's only there to try to impress their own people. Both of their aircraft carriers are not very good. There'd be nothing like the Nimitz class or an American carrier. Nothing. They wouldn't come close to it. Additionally, their stealth bombers, the J, whatever it is, um, it's an inferior piece of hardware compared to the F-35 or the F-22. It'll be much inferior to the F-47 and F-44. It's going nowhere, and it's going nowhere fast. So a lot of their military prowess, and you'll see, like North Korea is the same. They're always big on things like parades and things like that. Or it's like when the Soviet Union was collapsing, they always had a big May Day parade, taking missiles on launchers, mobile launchers on trucks through Red Square. But they were imploding economically when it was happening. So the thinking of the United States under all administrations was we only have to last them out. As they disintegrate economically, they're not going to be able to sustain this war machine until it got to the point of when Reagan knew that, and he basically got the Saudi Arabians and others to collaborate with him to destroy the Soviet Union economically. You make economic war, and China has fallen into it. Now let's understand the specific response to your question. China will always follow Sun Tzu, the art of war. A spy is better than 10,000 soldiers. That is one of the problems I have with the trade deal that Mr. Trump has made. It's going to make it easier for Chinese students to get visas to come to the United States. I believe that on a postgraduate level, there should be no visas. They are not students, they are spies. They're here to engage in industrial and political espionage. I think that is one of the reasons I don't like the deal. Secondly, while I have nothing good to say about Biden, they did restrict chip exports. And although South Korea disappointed me, didn't go far enough, Taiwan certainly did. This is giving China access to chips that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So I do not agree with the China deal of Mr. Trump, even though it sounds pretty good that we are taxing them at 55%, they're taxing us at 10%. I don't think it's very good. When you are allowing Chinese students to come into your country, think the way they do. Follow Sun Tzu. These are spies. The Chinese government requires these students to act as agents for the Chinese government when they study abroad, particularly in the United States. Uh, in other words, to China, they're already at war with the United States.
Right.
Not a kinetic war, but
Right.
at war. They're already at war. Fentanyl. You flood America with fentanyl and get the nation strung out and kill as many people and create as much social havoc you can with fentanyl. That's part of the warfare. These students coming in to collect intelligence, that is part of their warfare. Everything they do is part of their warfare. They are already at war with us, and America needs to wake up and realize that they are at war with us. There's only a partial realization of it. And I am disappointed with the China deal for those reasons. It does affect defense. Not only that, but again, the dog wagging. When they're in trouble, they have to divert. Now, when they divert, that gets into warfare. That gets them into more trouble. The Afghan war, when Russia invaded Afghanistan, in the long term, that made their economic situation worse. You know what I mean? Putin going into the Ukraine, he thought it was going to help Russia to get control of those minerals and the grain of the steppes. It's made his economic situation worse. It backfires on them. It often backfires on them, but it's still the game they play, and we need to be aware of it.
Yeah. Jacob, with their plan to 35 and then 49, obviously we're looking down the road of not only Taiwan is their plan, but the South China Sea, down Australia, New Zealand. I mean, major influence. Xi might not even be there for the 2027. I don't even think his fourth term is even guaranteed. He thinks of himself as some Genghis Khan, with the Silk Road, and he's got the
Of
Belt
course.
Initiative. You think he lasts, and you think these plans to Australia, New Zealand, and that area being so weak now, will they expand?
Again, with his demographic decline, with the rise of India and Vietnam and other competitors in Asia, and the repatriation of manufacturing back to the United States and Europe, okay, and with his the shadow banking crisis that's looming on top of the real estate crisis, and the internal debt crisis, which is far worse than ours. Not that ours is to be taken lightly. Again, it becomes a lasting game. How long can you last? China likes to take the long view, but Ping doesn't seem to be doing that. Just like Putin. Putin has always been embittered having lost the Cold War, but now he's making the same mistakes that the old Soviet Politburo made by going into Ukraine. He's making the same mistakes like when Brezhnev went into Afghanistan. He's making the same kinds of mistakes. People don't learn from history. Even Christians don't learn from history most of the time.
That's very true.
Unfortunately. Okay. If you don't learn from history, you doom yourself to repeat its catastrophic consequences. And that is proving true of China as best I can estimate it.
Jacob, is China in biblical prophecy at all whatsoever?
The land of sin is not found there. Some have speculated about certain things, but it's like some have speculated about the United States.
Right.
or about Great Britain being the young lion, the lion and the young lions. It's speculative. You'd have a hard case to make it exegetically cogent presentation of evidence that would say yes.
Very good. Yeah, I don't find it either. At least it's maybe one of the nations that comes into it.
When the Bible was written, it was so far away, and the desert of Baluchistan and the Himalaya Mountains were a natural barrier. You know what I'm saying? They were a natural barrier. We need to remember, it was not until the time of Francis Drake and Magellan that began to change in people's thinking even. East was east, west is west, never the twain shall meet. Well, that was cultural, but it was also geographical up until the time of Ferdinand Magellan and Francis Drake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very true.
Can I add something, Marco,
Yeah,
on
yeah, go
China?
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, China has this, has this line called the line of islands. They want all these islands to be owned. They believe Japan, Philippines, Taiwan is all theirs. And so one thing that has now been interfering, Japan has now made a defense pact with Philippines to help them when there are problems against this, and also Cambodia is lined up with Japan. We're seeing South Korea lining up, and so China is becoming pretty much isolated over there because of its bullying, and also China, by its own estimate, is saying that a war would to take Taiwan would cost them $10 trillion. And then the question that follows up, if they do that and destroy Taiwan, who's going to do business with them? Because it's going to be a serious dent in the AI markets and the chips and everything. So that and I don't think, and they can't even look at taking Taiwan before the next communist meeting in 27. They're just they're they're very brittle. They're not as strong as they project. They can break apart relatively easy with all. They have so much against them, and more so now that India's new plan for isolating them. And then a lot of people are seeing that they're not getting inroads into China with these trade deals. They're actually becoming run through organizations that take away their manufacturing. And now Trump is offering, hey, be a manufacturing, we'll import to us and get you the right material. So they're becoming isolated, and there's a lot of internal dissension over
Yeah.
Z going on. A lot.
Since Tiananmen Square, it has to be remembered, the
Right.
CCP, since Tiananmen Square, their idea, let's put it this way, people in the West don't understand Confucianism. Even though they may call it communism or call it whatever you want, Confucianism permeates the mentality of much of Asia. You even see it in Singapore. The Asian mind, up to a point, will settle for a benevolent dictator as long as the people are prospering, because that's what Confucius taught. Okay, a benevolent emperor thinks benevolent dynasty. Okay, that is their mentality. That's what Confucius basically taught. Now that's not purely Eastern. You have the same thing talking about kings in the Hebrew scriptures, benevolent kings and so forth. Okay, I'm not saying it was only them, but Confucianism absolutely permeates the mentality of China and the Chinese. You even see it in the Singapore Chinese, you see it in the Malaysian Chinese, you see it in the Indonesian diasporic Chinese, you see it. That is definitely their mentality. So since Tiananmen Square, following this psychocultural predisposition towards a Confucian philosophy, as long as the people are prospering, as long as they're making money and doing well, they're going to accept the government and not question it or rebel against it. Lee Kuan Yew did that in Korea with the People's in Singapore with the People's Action Party. It was the same Confucian mentality. As long as everybody's making money and there's no trouble, we're not going to stand against the government. We're going to thank the government for making it like this. Okay. Once the economy begins to break down, as the real estate crash happened, and don't forget, the equity markets crashed once in China. Even that's another issue. And now, again, the shadow banking is looming and the debt crisis is looming. And the implications of the demographic decline and the inability of youth to find jobs, the unemployment among the youth. They're not able to deliver now. They're not able to follow the Confucian model of a benevolent dictatorship.
Yeah, it's not working.
It's not working. And they know that. They know that. they can't do it anymore. In COVID, they were locking people up inside their apartment buildings, just locking them up, not letting them out. And then when they did let them out, they had mobile crematoriums to
Yeah.
incinerate corpses. It's not working out, and they know it.
Yeah,
And you're right, Jacob, because China, internal reports show China is very paranoid of their own people.
Of course.
Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Hey, Jacob, real quick, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, is reporting now that there is contamination and radiological and chemical contamination in Natanz facility. So they have confirmed that. So they must have hit something. The Israeli must have
Yes.
hit something there. So that's being confirmed now. We've hit the hour mark, and I just want to let everybody know that start sending your questions on Rumble. For Jacob Prash, I'm backstage. We'll be going there to get some questions. Lots of questions about Israel, lots of questions about Tel Aviv, what's going on there, the believers, and of course, what's next here in America. Jacob, you brought up China, and I'm going to tie it into what's going on with the LA riots. You showed up on Monday, I believe. You arrived in LA, and just in time to say hi to the riots there.
Marco, the last time I flew into LA, James picked me up at the airport, LAX. We were driving up the 405 and the fires began. We actually saw the fires beginning over towards Malibu, with Topanga.
Yeah, the Topanga Canyon. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw the fires beginning over on the Malibu coast, north of Santa Monica. We actually saw the smoke by the Getty Museum. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We actually saw the first smoke, Pacific Palisades. We saw it. When I landed, the fires began. This
Yeah.
time I landed and I got in from Asia and there was riots.
Yeah.
Every time I come to LA, there's something apocalyptic.
Well, you
I
bring joy.
hope this doesn't come on with you to Tennessee, Jacob.
Oh, no.
Right. Yeah. Unless it goes to
That's
Memphis.
a red state.
Yeah, unless it goes. Well, if you go to Memphis, it's like a different country there. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, Jacob. So this was a war for the first time since 1992, since I was a teenager. The National Guard is on U.S. soils in L.A. again. This is not like the 1992 riots when I was a teenager.
With the Rodney King thing and all that.
Yeah, and I'd lived like 10 miles away from that place. So, the 1965 riots, I wasn't there. This is as authentic as AstroTurf, said one congressman. So, let's figure this out. You got the mayor, Karen Bass, a communist. Newsom, which, he's got a name called Newscum. Yeah, people call him Newscum here. And he's got all the, of course, the LA County mayors and all the LA County officials. And it's a mess because they've allowed rioting to start and continue over, they say, illegal immigration.
I'm not a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I didn't think he was a very good governor. I don't think he's a particularly good actor. He's just a weightlifter to me. But he warned Newscom about what happened to Gray Davies, remember?
Oh, yeah. You're right.
He warned them. As far as Karen Bass, who visited Castro 36 times or something, went to Cuba, she's a lesbian activist. That woman appointed the 3 senior fire chiefs
of
LA Fire Department were all lesbians who didn't know much, if anything, about fighting fires. But this is who you vote for. This is who you get. Now, let's look at this in terms of the riots. What the Democrats did after the Floyd riots, which was a whole hypocrisy in itself. Floyd was a criminal. He did 5 years in the joint. By all reports, he assaulted a pregnant woman with a knife once. He was knowledgeably passing out counterfeit money. He dies of fentanyl induced trauma. It was fentanyl induced trauma. I don't know if it was an overdose, but it was fentanyl induced trauma. The knee on the throat or knee on the neck may have contributed to it, but the autopsy didn't show it was the cause of death. He did not die of asphyxiation. Why that cop? Okay, the cop maybe should have been fired, but why he's in prison for murder or whatever is ridiculous. The Democrats took that, Black Lives Matter, and they made it into a complete nonsense to cause riots nationally. The worst riots, other than in Minneapolis, which is a sick city anyway, were obviously in the West Coast. They let this happen in LA. They particularly let it happen in Portland, Oregon, which used to be a nice city, and in Seattle, because the Democrats wanted to say, see, get rid of Trump.
Right.
Vote for Biden. Vote for a Democrat and the riots will stop. You've got to placate these rioters by voting for a Democrat.
Right.
Well, that's the only strategy they have. They're trying to do it again. You
Yeah.
know, we got to stop Trump. The only way to stop these riots is to get rid of Trump. That's what they're doing, and that's what they're doing with the backing of the legacy media. Only this time it's not working as well. In fact, compared to what it was, it's not really working much at all.
Oh, Jacob, let me give you some of the optics here. You got protesters against ICE, which is the immigration, service to get illegal immigrants back to their home country, and they're waving Mexican flags, all kinds of other flags. You got protesters with the kafiyas, the Free Palestine movements there. You got CCP agents, people that are connected to the CCP fomenting this.
Yes.
Because the CCP is very
Correct.
chaos, instability, and they don't want the National Guard there. I mean, it's crazy how it's gone
No,
back.
they want riots and destruction because they see it as a political means to get people to vote against Donald Trump.
Right. Yeah,
That
exactly.
that is their thinking. That's how corrupt they are. Additionally, they need the illegal immigrants because the American population, including Hispanic population of California, is leaving to go to red states. California is basically almost insolvent financially. Unspeakable fiscal mismanagement on a local, county, and state level. And Newscom has a lot to do with it, and his left-wing legislature. People are leaving; they have to replace them because in California and in certain other places, the census doesn't go by how many citizens there are, but by how many people there are in terms of apportionment.
Right.
So, in order to retain seats in the House,
This is big. Yeah.
that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's all corrupt.
Yeah. And you got these Alex Padilla, who's supposed to be a senator. I don't even know what kind of senator he is.
What a wacko he is.
He interrupts the DHS
Yeah.
interview, and he gets handcuffed, and now he's thinking like he's a victim. Oh, they handcuffed the senator.
It's like that like Maxine Waters is another one, and that other Senator McIvy in New Jersey, Congresswoman like McIvy. These people can arrange congressional visits. There's an office in Congress that arranges congressional visits for congressional delegations. All they say is we want to arrange a visit to these delegations and oversight. But they show up with a mob and begin kicking the door in and saying, let me. They want to provoke a confrontation.
Yeah, they're activists.
They want to provoke a confrontation to say, see, you're blocking democracy.
Yeah.
When they're the ones who are out of order.
Yeah, they're provocateurs for sure. I'm going to go to Jay real quick. Jay, we're from Southern California. I mean, originally from Texas, both of us, but from Southern California since. And you have some strong opinions about this and what's going on. I mean, you remember the LA riots in '92, and I remember them pretty well. And but
I remember the Watts riots in '65. Don't tell me your problem.
Well, that's another story for another time. But anyway, Jay, your thoughts on it and what's going on and how this is being fomented.
So I think first of all, this year will mark 20 years for me being in Los Angeles. I came from Houston, and I can tell you one thing that I've learned about Los Angeles is what Malcolm X said so many years ago about the United States is the same for Los Angeles. It's a plantation. You have the normal working class citizens that are actually legally here. They work and they pay taxes, and they would be considered the servants in the field. They do the majority of the work. They produce majority of the product that pays into the system for roads, for education, for healthcare. Then you have the house servants, which will use a representation of illegal, undocumented immigrants. They take the benefits, but they pay less into the system. And then you have people like Newsom, who distributed it not only to himself and to his cronies, but to unproportionately to the illegal immigrants. I'm gonna break it down by numbers. 59.8 billion in the United States is paid by the citizens for education K through 12. 85% is paid by citizens, used by the undocumented, but 20%. Emergency healthcare, 18.5 billion is paid. 90% is paid by the United States citizen, and 25% is used by the undocumented. Welfare and SNAP, 5.8 billion, 100% paid by the citizens. 15% is used by the undocumented citizens. Criminal justice, 9.2 billion, 95% paid by the citizen, used by the undocumented, 10%. Roads and infrastructure, 6.5 billion, paid almost exclusively by the citizen, 20% used by the undocumented. Now, my faith tells me that I need to take care of my neighbor, but that is not an exclusion to what it says in Proverbs. An unjust weight is an abomination before the Lord. And what you have right now is the most unjust weight you can possibly have. The taxpayer, the citizen, pays on a proportion, pays much more to support illegals, housing, scholarships, grants. All of these go to them and their children, and they pay less into the system. That is an unjust weight. That is literally taking advantage and putting and enslaving people.
Yeah, and that's what you see here. Yeah,
that's what I see here.
And you're 100% right. It's exactly what we see in states like California, which is 99.99% democratically run. And what you do see, though, it's Jake. I'm going to go back to you real quick. This weekend we have the No Kings protest. Now I'm going to show you a map real quick, just to show you that it's not just a California thing. It is a nationwide thing. This is a No Kings protest. This is, of course, organized, they say, as a reaction to ICE being in Dallas and California, especially Los Angeles. But this has been organized for quite a long time. It seems like you go to anywhere in the map and you'll find a No Kings protest. This is for the 14th of June. Happens to be the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. Happens to be Flag Day. But they're saying that Trump is calling himself a king. So there's supposed to be riots and it's supposed to be peaceful, but it's never quite peaceful. And as long as Maxine Waters says it's peaceful, I guess he can duck for cover. But there's all these places that are going to have these riots, protests, whatever you want to call them. Jacob, what are we going to see this weekend? I mean, this is an opportunity for Antifa. You got communist groups, Mexican communist groups, Hispanic communist groups going in. They're being paid $200 a day to be there. I mean, this sounds like a disaster coming up.
Well, in a nutshell, they lost the election. They could not win democratically, so they're going to engage in things that are anti-democracy. What is supposed to be peaceful protests, they're hoping is going to result in another George Floyd type insurrection environment. If you can't win peacefully by election, by cogent argumentation, by town halls, by reasonable debate in Congress, if you cannot win legally, win illegally. Now, their first counteroffensive against the democratic will of the people is misuse of the judiciary by corrupt judges who are activists who should never have been appointed and who should be removed. That is their first, because they don't control the House, the Senate, most governorships, or the White House. So they'll first misuse the judiciary to the degree possible. Secondly, they'll do this. They don't want peaceful protests. They want these things to explode into violence. That's their only strategy. That's what they did the last time, when for week after week after week after week, people who belong in prison, like the mayors and governors of cities in the West Coast, who let this go on, refusing to protect property, refusing to enforce the law. That's what they want. And now they're doing with illegal immigrants. They're called undocumented workers. You can say she's a sex worker, he's a sex worker. They're still a whore. You know what I mean? They're still a paid whore. You know what I mean? You can say an undocumented worker, they're still an illegal alien. They're a criminal. They've all broken federal law. Don't make these people into victims. They've broken the law.
David Lister, your thoughts on this and what's going to happen this weekend? I mean, overall, but also there's fomenting this violence that we've seen in the riots. We've seen flags from different countries, Kafia, CCP agents, Iranian agents. I mean, you name it, it's there, paying people $200 a day. I mean, it is going to be wild if we're already seeing what New York City's dealing with.
Well, of course, you've got basically 100 pro-democracy groups that are kind of at the lead of this, with an estimated 2 million people are supposedly going to turn out from big cities to little bitty towns everywhere. So will it, and of course, at what they're actually saying is supposed to be millions of people coming out for peaceful protests, and they don't want the violence, but what they say and what they do are two different things. So I can't imagine that all these small towns in red states and everything that we're going to see tens of thousands of people. Maybe you might get some bigger places, but 2 million people times $200 a piece is a lot of jack, man.
That's a lot
So
of
I
money.
don't know if their pockets are that deep. And but they'll do it in what they'll do is try to do key places, Philadelphia, LA, New York, some of these others. They'll try to get the publicity there. I could see it being a fail in many states, like down there. And I love how the sheriff down there in Florida
I love
handled
them.
his, if he said it was sort of like, if you remember the movie The Untouchable, where Sean Connery says, if we bring a knife, you bring a gun. They put one of us, they hurt one of us, we'll put five of theirs in the morgue. It's that type speech in it, but so I doubt they're going to show up in his town, no, and or cause any problems. So I hope, my hope is that it's a big flop in most of the USA, because people are becoming prosperous. Their confidence is up, but all we're getting from the Democrats is outrage. Outrage about this, outrage about that, outrage about a senator charging a woman who is under death threats. you know, I would have got rid of anybody charging if I was a Secret Service guy. The guy's running at a woman who's had death threats, who's wearing, bulletproof jackets wherever she goes. And even in indoors, I've seen her in the jacket. So he got what he deserved. He should have got worse. And he was a chump. He had that little bit. He's this big guy. He's a pretty big guy. He had that little guy pushing him all the way around. What a wimp.
Alex Padilla is a nightmare. Alex Padilla is
Yeah.
a nightmare, and he's no.
So they should, it's too bad they didn't break his arm or something, and just as they dropped him to the floor. But he didn't say he was a senator till he was way back,
Yeah,
moving backwards, and this didn't go like he wanted.
he's a
But
provocateur. Yeah, he's a
yeah, provocateur. That's all they do, is just find outrage and trying to stir up. But look, American people can see through a lot of this, and the Democrats are standing on 20% versus 80%. And so they're thinking more polls saying, oh, Trump's dropping through the floor. Well, I don't think it's happening, because I mean, they've lied once or twice before on polls. So I don't really trust them anymore.
Yeah, just Jacob, before we finish this topic and go to Northern Ireland, I did want to ask you about some of these wild ideas that are being put out to the young people that you see them rioting there. You see illegal immigrants from Mexico, from anywhere, from Guatemala, from down to Nicaragua to Venezuela. You see them. And the idea that they're being fed is that California, the Southwest United States,
Yes.
Mexico, Texas, it's not part of the United States. This is some mythical land called Aslan that was
Yeah.
taken from Mexico, and basically the United States
The
colonized it.
Alamo never happened. Golad never happened. The Gadsden Purchase never happened. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
don't, what they won't tell you is that a lot of Hispanics fought with
Custard, yeah.
the other
The
Texans
Tex-
against Santa Anna. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Uh, they didn't like Spain ruling. They didn't want to live under the Spanish Empire. So a lot of Hispanics, like Zorro, the TV show Zorro, and the movies, they
Yeah.
didn't like the Hispanic authorities. It was Spain. They they rebelled against it. So they're rewriting history. They're engaging, first of all, in revisionism. But to see people, illegal aliens, burning American flags and running around with Mexican flags, can you imagine if Americans went down and did that in Mexico? Burned Mexican flags and running around
Oh
with,
man.
Yeah.
and the United States could have done that in the Mexican War before the American Civil War. The American Marines conquered Mexico City. They landed in Tampico Bay. The United States could have taken Mexico easily, but they didn't want it. They gave it back. Um, you know,
And,
there was never, when they went down to get Pancho Villa, it was because the Mexican government couldn't stop Pancho Villa from doing his raids on New Mexico and things like this. So Pershing went down there to put Pancho Villa out of business. It was never any American colonialism against Mexico. They're just lying.
They get these poor young Hispanic kids and they feed them really bizarre ideas. I was in college and I remember groups like Mecha or La Raza or El Barrio will come to these Hispanic kids and say, hey, did you know that you're being oppressed? And did you know that this land was part of,
Yep.
Latin America? And so they believe this, they go into it, and now they feel like they need to take it back. That's why this is such violence.
Yep.
We're going to just take it back.
I mean,
This is,
to be honest, originally, the indigenous people of Los Angeles and California are the Chumash and the Tongva tribes.
That's
So
right.
Mexico and Spain colonized. Their European colonists came and took the land from the original indigenous people. So
Yeah.
why don't we just, if we're going to talk about indigenous
That's
people,
correct.
give it back to the Chumash tribe.
yeah. You know what's crazy, Jacob? A lot of the those in power in Mexico, they're not even native Mexican. They're Europeans.
Of course.
They're from Germany. They're from Poland. They're from Austria. And by the way, quick little secret: a lot of them in Latin America, especially those in power, are very racist against the indigenous. So if you're Hispanic,
Yep.
indigenous, if you're, if you're even
Yep.
mixed, you are looked down upon. Remember Che Guevara? Che
Yep.
Guevara used to call Mexicans cockroaches because
Called
they
them
didn't go to his
cucarachas.
plant.
He
Yeah, that's
referred-
cucarachas.
He called peones generally cucarachas, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah, because they didn't go with this plan because people just wanted to work and just stay out of the way. But this is another,
The way they lie, if you look at the first major activist in the United States of Hispanics, it was one of the Cesar Chavez,
Grape workers. Yeah.
the Mexican migrant workers in the San Joaquin Valley. He was against illegal immigration
yeah,
because he knows it was hurting Hispanic Americans.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, they don't tell them all that stuff, but it's of course this is revisionist history, racist history, and what they say about Americans is really wild. By the way, and a lot of people don't know. People that are Caucasians and they're supporting this, you don't know how much they hate Americans, Anglo-Saxon Americans, and these communists, people that come over and they absolutely spit on people like, it was in a sense would be like, David Lister or Davy or Jacob would see, and they would just be hating them. Why? Because they don't like Anglo-Saxons. That's just the way they are. And yet
Gringos,
support it.
those
Yeah,
Anglos.
yeah. Yet you have, I guess people like Jacob says of low intelligence, they support people like that. When in reality, they think of them as garbage. But you can't even
Well,
talk sense.
and it, there are honest black people, particularly educated ones, but even some others, who realize that the number one reason there's a lack of upward mobility economically in the black community is one, absentee fatherhood, and two, what you have in Baltimore, where 93% of the children fail math. A
Oh
failed
yeah.
school system that's designed to fail and designed to keep black people ignorant and who will just do what they're told by their community leaders and vote for who they're told for, told to vote for. Same as happened under slavery. Now, those are the two main problems: the intentionally failed school system and the teachers unions, and the other is absentee fatherhood, the moral breakdown. That is what is. Those are the two things most responsible for the lack of economic upward mobility in Black America. Yet they're being told it's because of systemic racism. You know,
I know. It doesn't, I know it's so frustrating
told the
because
lie.
yeah, even with our own families, even with our own friends. And unfortunately, these sometimes Christians, progressive Christianity gets involved and they start saying Jesus was a migrant. We need to support foreigners because the
Yeah.
Bible commands us to support foreigners and, bring them in, treat them like, like your own. When
Well, I'm not
obviously,
glad that Tim Keller's dead, but I'm glad he's gone.
that was part of him. Jim Wallace, Sojourners, all these.
Yep.
It's the same kind of mentality. Jacob, let's finish off with what's going on in Ballymena. You've been there. You're quite familiar with Northern Ireland. This is the fifth day of protest. This is an anti-immigrant, anti-illegal immigration protest. They actually, a young girl, 14 years old, was almost raped by some illegal immigrants in Northern Ireland. The riots began. They burned down the shelter where the illegal immigrants well, actually were being hosted in a very nice place. And residents are hanging British flags. Of course, the UK government has to come in there and tell everybody that they're doing that they are racist, that they don't like migrants, and they need to stop. But the people are keep going. Jacob, this is getting
First of all, it's
intense
not just Ballymena in Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. It is Cork in the Republic of Ireland and elsewhere, which is
down the
which is
south.
different. In Cork in the Republic of Ireland, the immigrants are marching with Palestinian flags while the Irish patriots are marching with Irish flags. It is
Hmm.
an attempted Islamic takeover of Ireland. That's what
Yes.
it is. Ireland is one of the most vulnerable countries to an Islamic takeover in Europe because of its small size and because of the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin, the political parties are anti-Israel. And the stupidity of not all, but many people equating the Israeli presence in Israel with what the British did in the history of Ireland, ignoring the fact that as the Irish are the indigenous people of Ireland, the Jews, according to archaeology and the Bible and history, are the indigenous people of Israel. Yet, instead of realizing that it is the Muslims who are the colonialists and the invaders, they're blaming the indigenous people, when in fact it was the Muslims who are the equivalent of the British. Higgins is a disgusting human being. The reason I cannot call Michael D. Higgins a disgusting human being is because I'm far from convinced he's even human. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, finna be somebody better to vote for. This is the stupidity of it. You have in any strongly Roman Catholic country, not that Ireland cares about Catholicism much anymore. Michael Martin, another example, is because of the strong Roman Catholic history, which is always predisposed towards anti-Semitism. Remember, you had international fascism in the 1930s and 40s. The Centrum supported Roman Catholic Centrum made the coalition that brought Hitler to power in Germany. You had the Vichy French. You had, supported by the Catholic Church, much of the Catholic clergy. You had the Ustashis in Serbo-Croatia, Nazis supported by the Roman Catholic Church. You had the original Falango in Lebanon, French-speaking Lebanese, who were fascist, supported by the Roman Catholic Church or the Eastern rites of it. You had the Peronistas, the Peronists in Argentina, supported by the Roman Catholic Church. You had the fascists in Spain under Franco, supported by the Roman Catholic Church. You had Benito Mussolini, supported initially by the Roman Catholic Church in Italy. Well, in Ireland, you had the blue shirts. You know, they had the brown shirts in Germany and the black shirts in Italy. You had the blue shirts in Ireland. The leader of the IRA at the time, the chief of staff, came to Germany and he was trained by the Nazis. He was literally trained by the Nazis. Now, you can argue that that was in part because they didn't, not that they liked Hitler, but because that they didn't like the British, because of the history. You can make something of an argument like that. But after the death camps were liberated, after they knew what the Holocaust was, after they knew what the Nazis did, Eamon de Valera, the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Ireland, who was born in New York, went to the German embassy in Dublin and signed the Book of Remembrance in memory of Adolf Hitler.
Wow.
And he was born on Lexington Avenue in Manhattan, Irish Catholic. He was half Hispanic. De Valera, his father was Hispanic.
Oh, wow. Wow.
He went, you know, he had certain inclinations towards the Peronistas and, you know, and Franco, because he was Spanish.
Yeah.
But, and the anti-British resentment and so forth. But even after Hitler was dead, after the war was over, after they knew what he did, he went and he signed the Book of Remembrance. This is a big problem in Ireland. But there are Irish patriots who don't like this and who never did. There were people in Ireland who made financial contributions to Dietrich Bonhoeffer to bribe the Swiss border guards to get Jews into Switzerland and things like this. Not all the Irish people went with it, and not all Irish people go with it today. There are Irish patriots who realize the truth, who are not anti-Israel, who realize that most American Jews are pro-United, pro-Republican, and who see what the Islamic invasion is. It's crazy. You see people carrying Palestinian flags and people carrying Irish flags, and the Gardaí, the Irish police, are saying at the command of their political leaders that it's the Irish who are the bigots and who are wrong. It's the Irish patriots who are the bad guys, not the jihadists, not the Muslim invaders. Northern Ireland is different. Starmer is just taking all these people, many of them Muslims, some of them non-Muslims, and just dumping them in Northern Ireland. Because Britain has never cared about mainstream Britain has never cared about Northern Ireland. Anyway, the Northern Irish Protestants have been very naive, trying to be more British than the British and loyal to the crown. Most people in Britain don't care about them, and the British government has never really cared about them either. So they're just dumping them in Ireland. And you have the predictable results. They used to fly Union Jacks in protest against the IRA and against Irish republicanism. The IRA, the Fenians, would fly the Irish flag, okay, which was green was Catholic, orange was Protestant, and the white stripe between the two was may there be peace between Catholic and Protestant. That's the flag of the Republic of Ireland. So the IRA would have that flag, okay? The Protestant Unionists had the Union Jack. Now they're flying the Union Jack not about the Irish or Republicans or Fenians. They're flying it about immigrants transplanted from Ghana and from the Muslim world and elsewhere. This is what's happening. May the Irish patriots and may the British patriots in Northern Ireland, may the Northern Irish patriots and the Southern Irish patriots prevail. And may the government of Starmer be deposed democratically and quickly. And may the government of Martin and Higgins be deposed democratically and quickly.
Amen.
Absolutely. David Lister, thoughts on this? I know we got to close it out pretty soon, but any thoughts on Northern Ireland? They literally are transporting migrants in there, and the illegal migrants are causing all kinds of chaos. People had enough. They're tired of the prices going up. The houses, they can't even rent houses anymore because they're being
Oh,
bought.
the government's putting people in, sorry, David, they're putting people in houses that are artificially driving up rents and mortgages because of this policy. The government just don't care what they're doing to the Irish. Ballymena is a little market town. It's
Mm.
probably doesn't have many more than 25, 35,000 people, something like that. I spoke there in a church. It's a little market town, but they're being murdered by the Starmer government
Mm.
on behalf
I mean,
of Islamic immigration.
yeah, Islam has a plan funded by rich nations, oil nations, and everything. They want to take over, and people should be aware because when they come in under the banner of minority rights, and yet when they get in, the only minority when Islam gets in power, there's no such thing as minority rights. There's only majority rights, and people in Plano and other places in Texas should be worried about it too. I've seen, I was up in Detroit and used to go into um, where the mosque was. I actually visited that mosque, the main mosque there, and everything. I wouldn't go in there now anymore. It's become radicalized, and so Ireland is going to lose their country if they don't stand up for it now. They don't
Yeah,
have much time.
yeah, and it's been slowly coming, right, David? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
slowly coming. It's just like how did you go bankrupt? Very slowly, and then all of a sudden, it's just a slow moving process, and then now you see it, and all of a sudden you're out of a house, you're outside, girls are being raped, attacked, killed, and people just had enough. I don't know what ultimately is going to happen, but this is the fifth day of rioting there.
Yeah, there. Listen, it's happened in America. I used to work in a town called Lewiston, Maine, and Auburn. They were twin cities divided by a highway. And now it looks like little Somalia in Lewiston.
Oh
It's
my!
all been taken
Oh,
over.
Lewiston, I know Lewiston. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
Ali fought a championship there and everything, got famous for that. But now they're not twin cities anymore. One has gone down economically. Auburn is maintained, but people are moving out because aligned that you see on there's YouTube videos of young white people in the being attacked by groups of blacks and things, and so people are moving away.
And this was
They will
Carter,
take it.
this was Bush. They let these Muslims in from the Sudan and Somalia who never should have been allowed in the country.
And they organize, which is something that Americans have let go. They get organized, they vote as a group, and then they get in just a little bit of power, school board, or work their way up onto, and then they keep taking over. They're acting all benevolent and everything wonderful at the beginning, but once they grab power, then it's Sharia law.
Yeah,
So,
same theology. Same theology,
yep,
right, David? Just get enough
yep.
power, pretend, and then here comes Sharia law.
It's called deception and warfare.
Yeah, it's a
This
key. Yeah,
is the way they look at it. We look at it, oh, we're naive, we're being stupid.
yeah, it's absolutely. Jay, final thoughts before we go. Texas, what you've seen there. I know we've been concerned. David brought up the North Dallas area, Plano, and all that with the new Muslim city that's coming in there. Have you noticed that when you being there and being in Houston? Obviously, is a little bit different than Northern Dallas, but what do you see and what do you notice?
Well, Houston prides itself that it's the capital of the South. I don't know if that's necessarily the truth. It's not the South that I grew up in. Houston is unrecognizable for the Houston that I grew up in. I have seen so many monuments to foreign gods and so many mega churches that I've listened to some of the things they preach, and I can understand why Houston and the rest of Texas is slowly being eroded from Christianity. What's being preached from most of the pulpits here is a form of Christianity that is going to allow the rise of Hinduism and Islam in it.
Incredible. I mean, if you think about Texas was like the buckle of the Bible Belt. And now you
Yeah.
got teachers like Copeland and T.D. Jakes and Joel
Austin,
Osteen.
Austin is based there, right?
Yeah, Osteen. Who was that guy? Morris, Robert Morris. On and on you go, and it's like, oh, Hagee and all these other guys that are there.
Long.
It's
Yep.
like the judgment's coming upon all these false teachers, man. The
Yeah.
invasion of hey, you want bad theology? Here,
I'll give you
have
better.
have Islam. We'll give you. It's the same thing as what God did to the Jews under the kingdom. You want bad here, you can have worse. We'll send you Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, Jacob's always talked about Islam as a judgment on the Christian Western nations, and you see it. Texas is just a microcosm of what's been happening already for a long time. So,
The only thing is, Texas, you've got conservatives, a number of whom were Christians, going there as refugees from blue states.
right.
On the other hand, you've also got liberals from California going to Austin.
Look what they did to Austin. Beautiful Austin. Look what they did. What a
Yep.
mess. Jacob, you've been right. It's a judgment upon the backslidden Christian church. And
Yep.
I used to make a joke with Jay.
The
There used to be
world.
California that had all the crazy teachers here from Rick Warren and all that. Now it just seems like Texas has an embargo. He has a cluster of them. So anyway, we're gonna go to backstage. Send your questions in to Jacob Prash. He's got answers from the Bible to life and godliness. So let's pay attention to what the Word of God says and what Jacob's going to tell us. So send your questions in on Rumble, backstage. We won't be on YouTube. We won't be on Facebook, but we'll be on the other one. So join us there. God bless you guys. We'll see you in just a few minutes.